Listen up, because this isn't a story about smart investments. Not really. It's a story about peace of mind and how some people confuse a solid foundation with a tombstone. I spent nearly 20 years in commercial construction management. I wasn't swinging a hammer anymore, but I knew concrete. I knew budgets. I knew that if you cut corners on the foundation, the whole damn skyscraper comes down eventually. That philosophy, that belief in solid groundwork, was how I lived my life, and it was the central conflict between me and Maria. We were living in the suburbs outside Atlanta, right during that period where the housing market went absolutely bananas. You couldn't sneeze without a house doubling in value. I was doing well enough. My goal was simple, maybe boring. I wanted a modest ranch house, 3 bedrooms, a yard big enough for a dog, and I wanted a 30-year fixed-rate mortgage. I wanted a payment that wouldn't change, a payment I could manage even if I got laid off for 6 months. Predictable, safe. That was my definition of winning. Maria, though, she saw that kind of stability as a personal failure. Maria had a hunger for more, and she wanted it now. She was constantly scrolling through pictures of houses with white marble kitchens and infinity pools. She didn't want to wait 30 years to build equity slowly. She wanted to ride the wave. And then she met guys like Chad. Chad was the real estate flipper archetype, straight out of central casting. Flashy watch, driving a leased European sedan, always talking about scaling the portfolio and using OPM, other people's money. He was borrowing massive amounts, using high-interest bridge loans that had to be paid back in 6 months, and flipping houses so fast they barely had time to cool down. He was a master of leveraged ambition. He was walking on a tightrope, but from where Maria stood, he looked like he was flying.
"Mike," she'd say, watching Chad's Instagram stories showing off a new 6-figure profit. "Look at this. This is how you live in America right now. You don't build wealth by paying down a fixed rate for 30 years. You build it by using money. You're too scared to borrow." I tried to explain the math. I told her, "Maria, Chad isn't rich. Chad is leveraged. If the market stays hot, he's a genius. If it slows down for 3 weeks, he's bankrupt. He's got half a dozen properties running on loans that expire next Tuesday, and he's paying 12% interest to keep them afloat." She'd just wave her hand dismissively. "That's the difference, Mike. You see risk, Chad sees opportunity. You see a fixed payment, Chad sees capital that should be working harder. You're living small." The tension grew thick. I finally closed on my house, a nice, solid 1970s brick ranch. I got the fixed rate I wanted. My payment was low enough that I could still save money every month, put extra into my 401k, and sleep like a baby. I was proud. I brought home the paperwork thinking Maria would finally appreciate the security. Instead, she looked at the amortization schedule, that long, terrifying list showing how much interest you pay over 30 years, and sighed. "30 years, Mike," she whispered, shaking her head. 30 years until we own a house that's already 20 years old. Chad closed on a 3rd property this week. He's talking about converting short-term rentals into a trust fund." That was when the comparisons really started to sting. She wasn't comparing our finances anymore. She was comparing our souls. She started spending more time with Chad and his crew, going to investor mixers that were mostly just champagne parties where everyone congratulated each other on their paper wealth. I stayed home, painting the trim on my fixed-rate ranch, making sure the gutters were clean. Then came the phrase that detonated our life together.
We were arguing about a modest vacation I had planned, a week at the beach, paid for in cash. Maria wanted to take out a personal loan and go to Europe, arguing we should be investing our current cash flow into something high yield instead of wasting it on memories. I stood my ground. "I am not taking on debt for a vacation, Maria. That's insane. I like knowing exactly where my money is and knowing that if things go sideways, I have a buffer." She looked at me, and her eyes were cold, distant, like she was looking at a stranger trapped in amber. "You confuse stability with emotional paralysis, Mike," she said, her voice flat. "You are so afraid of failure and debt that you've stopped living. You have built a cage of predictability and you call it peace. Frankly, you seem emotionally dead." That was it. That was the end. If my discipline was emotional paralysis, then we were fundamentally incompatible. She packed her bags within the month. She moved into a pricey apartment downtown, financed by some of the money she'd pulled out of our joint savings to invest in one of Chad's sure thing deals, a renovation project in a rapidly gentrifying neighborhood. I was heartbroken, but I kept painting my trim. I kept making my fixed payment. My life was boring. It was quiet. It was steady. And Chad was still flying high. He was on top of the world. He bought a small speedboat. He was talking about starting a venture capital firm. Maria was always posting pictures of herself at his open houses, sipping expensive wine, looking like she was finally living the life she deserved. Then the inevitable happened. The Federal Reserve started nudging the interest rates up, just a little. But in the highly leveraged world Chad lived in, a little nudge is an earthquake. Suddenly, those quick sales weren't so quick anymore. Buyers who were used to locking in 3% mortgages were balking at 5.5%.
Chad's entire business model relied on selling House A to pay off the bridge loan on House B before the deadline hit. But when House A sat for 60 days, Chad was bleeding cash. That 12% interest rate on his loans was eating him alive. I watched it happen from the safety of my fixed-rate bunker. In my construction management job, we started seeing projects stall. Subcontractors weren't getting paid. The gossip was everywhere. First, the rumors started. Chad was having trouble closing on the big development he'd boasted about. Then, the visible signs. His fancy car vanished, repossessed, they said. The speedboat was listed for a quick sale. Maria's social media activity went silent. The champagne pictures stopped. I didn't reach out. I couldn't. She had called me emotionally dead, and I had to respect the distance she demanded. But I did hear things through mutual acquaintances. Chad wasn't just broke, he was underwater. He had signed personal guarantees on almost everything. The bank was coming for his personal assets. And Maria? She had sunk her savings into that sure thing renovation project. Chad had used her money, along with others, to service his expiring debt on other properties, hoping to sell something to plug the hole. When the project finally went into foreclosure, Maria's investment was wiped out completely. I heard she had to move out of the expensive downtown apartment, the one that symbolized her freedom from my paralysis. About 6 months after the bottom completely fell out of the local flipping market, I was at the grocery store on a Saturday morning. I was wearing old jeans, buying coffee and dog food. I saw her in the next aisle. She looked tired. Not just physically tired, but fundamentally exhausted. The sparkle was gone. She was wearing clothes I hadn't seen in years, clothes from before the Chad era. Her eyes met. It was awkward, silent, heavy. She walked over slowly. "Mike," she said, her voice small.
"Maria," I replied. I didn't smile, didn't gloat. I just stood there. "You look stable," she mumbled, almost a question. I shrugged, adjusting the bag of dog food. "It's the fixed rate. It's boring, remember? My payment is exactly the same as it was the day I signed the papers. Couldn't be boring enough to save us, but it's saving me." She looked down at the floor. "I lost everything, Mike. Everything I put into that last venture. And the apartment, too. I'm staying with my sister now." I just nodded. I didn't need to say, "I told you so." The silence said it for me. The contrast between my quiet, predictable stability and her current reality was the loudest conversation we could have had. She looked up, and there were tears in her eyes. "I remember when I called you emotionally paralyzed. I thought you were weak because you valued security over ambition. Now I realize I confused anxiety with ambition." She took a shaky breath. "That peace you have, Mike, that boring, fixed-rate peace, I mocked it. And now, honestly, it's the only thing in the world I want." I stood there, looking at the woman I had loved, realizing that the stability she had rejected was exactly what she needed and what I was offering. But I couldn't rebuild her life for her. I had chosen my foundation, and she had chosen the whirlwind. "I'm sorry, Maria," I said, and I meant it. Not sorry for my choices, but sorry for her pain. "I hope you find your footing." I didn't offer help. I didn't offer reconciliation. I just paid for my groceries and went home to my modest, fully insured, fixed-rate ranch house. That night, I sat on my porch, listening to the quiet. My payment was due in 2 weeks, and I already had the money set aside. No high-stakes phone calls,
No looming deadlines, no debt collectors, just the predictable hum of a well-built life.
It was boring. It was stable. And I realized that what Maria had called emotional paralysis was actually the deepest form of emotional freedom. I was free because I wasn't owned by my ambition. I was free because I chose the foundation over the flash. And sometimes in this crazy American pursuit of more, choosing less is the only way to truly win.